The Porter 5 forces model start in analyzing what Professor Porter called value system, so the process of creating value from suppliers to final buyers. But then the model take into consideration additional two forces that are acting on an industry and put in the five forces framework additional elements, additional players. The addition number four is potential entrance into the industry. And force number five are substitute of the industry. So the number four entrants are those who want to enter the industry because it's an high profitability industry, there is growth or whatsoever. Substitute are products makers who do not want to enter the industry. They're just doing something that is similar of what you are doing. So if you look at the entrants are players that enter the industry because the industry is profitable or attractive, and they do investments, they create new production capacity, they take with them their competence, their resources, their core competence from other industries, so they increase entering the industry the overall competition level within the industry. This can happen either because someone is, let's say, on a greenfield approach, creating new companies or new production capacity within an industry, or can also happen because some players outside the industry are investing, are buying companies within the industry, taking with them a new strategy, so changing the acquired company and changing the level of competition within an industry. And then we have substitutes. Substitutes are products that are made outside the industry by someone who does not have any interest in entering our industry, but it's putting an option to our final customer. Therefore, is creating a different option for the same customer. And so here it's a matter of how much is the price of the substitute products and how much is the performance, how much is the value added for the customer coming from this substitute product. Therefore, every time we increase too much the price or lower too much the performance in terms of added value to the customers switch the industry as a whole, so decided to buy a substitute product. Here on the left, we have some example on this. And the way in which we analyze this example of substitute goods is understanding what is an industry and how an industry is reactive in a collective way to substitute products. So if you look at McDonald's and Burger King, they are in the fast food industry, and they work, act, compete one against the other. But on the other side, they also compete against other industries. Eat at home, for example. Therefore, they can also act in a collective way to taking overall action in terms of improving quality, improving marketing, and act against other competitors. You can have we had a clear example in the moment in which during the COVID pandemic, Burger King, in a way of doing a smart marketing campaign, but anyway showing the way in which this company act in terms of being in the same industry, make a statement saying order from McDonald's. So we, Burger King, probably the best and most important competitor of McDonald's, we are saying buy from our competitor. And if you read the Twitter side, was also buy from other companies like KFC, Subway, Domino's Pizza, Pizza Hut, Five Guys, Greg's, Taco Bell, Papa John's, Leon, and so on. So the point was all that names are perceived by Burger King managers to be in the same industry. And so they act with, facing a very hard moment and a very high risk of lowering overall at the industry level the consumers' demand. They are saying, please buy from us, from the industry. And that's a way in which you see that these two companies are working in the same industry, they are competing in the same industry, but in some cases they are also acting as an industry. On the other side, you have the other example, it's train and cars. Train and cars are not in the same industry, they are substitutes. You can decide either to use a car or to use a train, but the structure, the value system, the way in which you produce the products and provide the services are completely different. Therefore, these two industries do not act together. So, for example, during the pandemic crisis, nobody from the car industry say, oh, please buy products from us, but also from a train company, or the other way around, because these are two different industries. So they, as fast food, they enter the COVID crisis, they try to survive, they compete during the COVID crisis, but in different ways. So they are completely different industry. The way in which you can understand which is the way to analyze and identify your substitute industry is to understand what the customer is doing, is trying to do with your product. So here, the idea is coming back from the famous Marketing Myopia article from Professor Levitt in the 70s of the last century, in which Professor Levitt saying people do not, who buy power drill don't necessarily want to buy a 1/4 inch drill, they buy a 1/4 inch hole. So the point of this is that customer buy solution, things done, job that products do for them, not the product itself. It's not important. So the point is that I want to have a 1/4 inch hole, and there are a number of different industries with substitute products that can work to make the job done for me as a customer. So everyone is competing on the job to be done is a substitute industry. And if you can, let's say, elaborate a bit on Professor Levitt statement, probably they don't want a 1/4 inch hole. Probably they just want to hang their favorite painting. So adhesive from 3M is an additional solution doing the same job for the customer, but they do not need the hole, they just need to hang a painting. So adhesive is a good solution. It's a substitute product for drills because it's competing on the same job to be done that the product do for the customer. And here Professor Porter give us a couple of points that are useful for another case in nowadays environment. And he's saying that you have also always to check substitute products and substitute potential industry. And the way you have to do it is try to look to the price performance trade-off. So compare your price performance solution for the customer, how you do the job in terms of performance and price for the customer, and how other industries are doing the same job for the customer in another way in terms of industry. And if these two industries are competing on the same job to be done for the customer, and one of the two is earning high profit, that's an important way to understand, because the level of speed at which that second industry outside your industry competition, standard industry competition, there is another industry which is doing a lot of money, who is trending much more speedily on the technology curve, little by little, their price performance index will be better and will enter in your industry in terms of putting a threshold of how much you can sell to the customer in terms of price and how much is the added value you give to your customer. So if you look at newspapers, Little by little, they start to compete with big tech guy. For example, Google News is competing against, or let's say it's not competing, it's doing the same job to be done, giving information to customers. And if you look at the history of Google, Google was just born and was saying, our vision is to provide relevant information to customers. So in the moment in which Google was born, he was competing with the newspaper industry in some way. But in that moment, the price performance trade-off was incredibly in advantage for newspapers. Little by little, the big tech guys make a lot of money, they become better, and the industry, newspaper industry, enter in a crisis, and customer start to say, you know, I want the job to be done in a digital way. So here, for example, we have data from Italy, was 13, 14 of this century, and the digital number of copies bought by customers increased a lot. So this was a message. In terms of job to be done of getting information, I would prefer to have digital information instead of paper information. And unfortunately, it's in Italian, but I wrote an article on a paper newspaper that is the Sole 24 Ore, the biggest economic newspaper in Italy, with a larger diffusion. And I checked these 3 ideas for the future of newspapers, because they entered in a competition, and they had let's say, if you want to boil down the situation, they have a price performance trade-off, and the problem is not the price, it's the performance. So Porter is saying, you know, when this happens, you should decide if you want to add off to the substitute industry, or if you want to, let's say, try to work with them in some ways. And if you look at how much strong is the substitute industry of the tech giants, was Google as first to create a Google News initiative. And the idea was offering a partnership to the newspaper industries, to the news industry as a whole. So trying to find a way to partner that is, let's say, the first link in which the moment in which 2 industries start to merge together, and you start to see Google as a new entrance in your industry. And this happened 20 years after Google was founded, when Google became much more powerful. So there is an issue for that in terms of being in the news industry and having to compete with this big competitor who is using a different industry-wise structure, using different technology, who is using different pricing strategy and so on. But at the end, if you are in the news industry, since the beginning, having used the 5 forces model, you should have spot the idea of Google being a substitute. This didn't happen too much in the industry. The reaction of the news industry was to put for free their news and their product on the Google, so helping the migration of customers from the newspaper to the digital world, and from the website of the newspaper or the news magazine website, from there to the Google search engine. Therefore, there was a big strategic mistake they did in 2010, 2014, and now they are trying to, let's say, react on this, but it's, let's say, when you start with the wrong strategic decision, and you have to compete with the very big, rich, and technology sophisticated guy, it's a difficult, let's say, it's a difficult battle to win.